Now we need to taper this. I don't need to go all the way to the edge, but I want to get kind of close. And this tape is not anything special, it's just regular masking tape. And I'm putting light tape on this dark fingerboard so I can see a pencil line much better. To find the center line, I want to go off of the side that I joined, the smooth side, square side, flat side, which is here. And that is going to determine my center line, because I'm not sure that these sides are parallel. Full width is 64. My mark is going to be at 32. This would be almost impossible to see on the ebony, so that's why I put this lighter color tape on there. Okay, now we are going to measure for our taper. The plans call for the nut to be 43 millimeters wide, which is like 1.69 inches, I think.
I almost always use 1 3/4 inches, which is closer to 44 millimeters for the width at the nut.
Now if I am at 44 millimeters, half of that's going to be 22 on each side, but here's the caveat. I am going to bind my fretboard. If you're going to bind your fretboard, the bindings have a width somewhere between 2 and 2.5 millimeters. So you'll need to measure that first and take into account that measurement. So mine are 2 millimeters thick, which means that I need to reduce my width by 2 millimeters on each side. So if I'm at 44 wide, that means 22 on each side, and I need to take off 2 on each side, so 20 millimeters at the nut on each side of that center line. And my second line is going to be the 14th fret. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, there's our 14th fret. I'm going to put a pencil line across. Now at the 14th fret, the plans call for 56 millimeters, which is about what I use as well. Now -4, so that puts us at 52. Divide by 2, so I am at 26 millimeters on each side, taking into account my binding width. 26. Okay, on the other side of the center line, 26. All right, there are my measurements, and now I need to connect this to this and go all the way through to the end. Okay, now I have my taper, and I'm going to take this to the bandsaw and rough cut in that taper. I do want to stay outside of this line by 2, 3, 4 millimeters. I really don't want to get very close. And I want to double check my final widths once I get there, because even these pencil lines have a width. And if we can cut that pencil line in half and really be as exact as possible on our measurements, we're going to be much better off. I can take it to the jointer after I'm done at the bandsaw, or I can also just take a hand plane to it, preferably a jointer or a smoothing plane, something with a little larger bed that will get us a nice straight line. The low angle jack is kind of an ideal candidate for this, or a longer jointer plane. Off to the bandsaw. There is our taper. I'm going to finish this up with a hand plane, get up to that line, and then we can bind it. This cut isn't too far off that I did with the bandsaw, but I am gonna just take my jointer plane, number 7, and finish this off. Certainly don't need as long a bed as this, but it sure helps. I like hand planing this part of it because it is not nearly as fast to screw it up. And for me, it's just easier to maintain control of that angle. And the tape can roll over this edge on you. Real easy. So just keep track of that. Switch sides. And before you get right up on the line, take one last look with your square to make sure that the edge that you're going to bind is nice and square to the surface of the fretboard. Okay, let's take a measurement where we're at. So I am right at 41.5 maybe, which makes sense because I can still see pencil lines on this side. So I'm not quite there. Remember, I want to be at 40. And on the 14th fret, I am 52.5. Almost there. And again, that makes sense because pencil line's almost gone here. So I can take a 0.5 millimeter on the width here, a full millimeter up here. Since I am getting pretty close, really just a 0.5 millimeter away, I'm going to check the square. That looks good. All the way down. Because I don't want my binding to be on there cockeyed and cause a problem when we go to radius. Good, good, good. All right, so I'm just gonna finish up the width on this. Just a couple more passes ought to do it. Right at the line, right at the line. Okay. Double check the width, 40.5, 52.5. A couple of swipes with the plane ought to do it. That is 40 on the nose, 52 exactly. So we are good. All right, there we go. Ready to bind. Since I don't know what the final length is going to be, I don't know how this is going to tie into the sound hole quite yet. So I'm going to leave myself just a little bit of room on each end, here and here, and just it's good there. Do that same thing for the other one. Now you will notice that the binding is shorter than the fretboard, which is just fine because once we radius this, that gap there will go away pretty quickly. And that will not matter at all. So don't worry about that. Make sure that your wax paper or regular paper is down underneath this because we are going to be gluing on the bench. The way I want to bind this is to turn this over and get some binding tape on the back. and get this ready. Doesn't need to be that long. You can also use some clamps on this, but I find that clamps are a little cumbersome and they do not grip all that well because it's tapered. So I think the binding tape works much better in this scenario. If you can avoid taping over the slots themselves, it is much better so that we can get access to those and wipe out the squeeze out from the glue entering those slots from the side. And when they get narrower down here, there's not much you can do, so we'll just have to lift those up and clean those out and retape. Again, we do not need that much glue on here. We want to just cover the wood and have it so that the glue is kind of translucent. We also don't want to have so much that we have a ton of squeeze out into the fret slots. That is not a good thing. I mean, we can clean them up, and I'll show you how we're going to clean those up. Clean them up no matter what. Don't want to have so much gooping in there that it kind of flows everywhere. It's going to be really important to push this all the way down so that the binding is flush with the bottom of the fretboard. Now I'm pushing down onto the binding and pulling up on the tape. I'm going to flip it over, do this other side, because I already have all my tape ready and waiting for me. All right, that looks pretty good. And we'll drop this onto the side. Again, make sure that the binding is pressed all the way down to the bench, the bottom of the fretboard, which should be exactly the same. And hopefully all you see is a thin line of squeeze out. That's kind of all we really need to see. Now I'm going to clean out the fret slots. And I just take a razor to the edge of that, wipe it, just kind of push it back and forth in the fret slot. This is an important step because we do not want glue that is entering the fret channels to sit in there and dry and prevent us from actually installing our frets later. And you can make a tool for this if you want to. You can grind down a piece of metal, some sort of blade, to get it thin enough so it's about the same thickness as the fret saw, if not a little thinner, to help you out with this. But razors are a few bucks for 100 of them. They're nice and cheap, so I just use that. Okay, those channels are clear. So now I want to press any of these down even further. I want to make sure they're nice and clamped with the binding tape. And again, just double check that when you are clearing things out, it didn't move any of the binding, which would look good. And if you do see any troublesome spots, you can go ahead and stick a clamp on it at this point, since everything will probably stop moving by now. And you don't have to worry so much about skating. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. I don't see any trouble spots. Although I see one spot. Looks like there's still a little glue there. Yep, got it. It's always worth one last look. I think we're good to go for right now. I'm gonna let this dry for 30-40 minutes, come back to it and remove the tape and go from there. It has been about 45 minutes. So I'm going to take this tape off and take a look at the fretboard. Now I will throw this stuff away, reuse this wax paper for later, and we'll get to scraping the back of this. Now I'm taking a look at this, and I want to get this flush. I'm going to use my scraper. Now I'm going to use it pretty flat. I don't want to flex this out and dig a hole here. I'm going to hold this pretty close to straight up and down. Now once I've got this pretty well scraped, I take that flatboard sandpaper, give it a once over, make sure I didn't miss any large areas. Okay, that looks pretty flat. Now that that is sanded and flat, this looks great. I do want to trim these off real quick. So the way I'm going to do that is to nip them off pretty close to the end. If you do use your edge sander to bump this up against to square these off, make sure that you do not take any length off of this at all. This has to be preserved at all costs. Make sure you don't take any off. Rather than the edge sander, I usually take a file or my flatboard sandpaper and just give that a little sanding right there, and that usually does it. Takes care of the binding ends, and it's not so aggressive that it gets me out of square. I'm happy with that. I like the way that looks.
Now we're ready to cut it to length, so we'll see you in the next video.